You open your banking app at 11:58 p.m. $1,002, $417,000. It's the first time the number has a comma in it that actually changes what you feel. You don't celebrate. You don't post it. You just sit there, staring at it like it might disappear if you blink too hard. Because you remember something else. $997,000. 3 weeks ago. A different version of you thought crossing 1 million would feel like a rival. It didn't. It felt like pressure you didn't have language for yet. And that's where most people lose it. Not before the million. After. It usually starts quietly. No crash, no dramatic mistake, no obvious failure. Just small decisions that feel smart at the time. You upgrade your life slightly. Not luxury, just comfort. A better apartment because you can afford it now. A new car because reliability is important. Better dinners because you worked for this. Each decision feels justified on its own. But together, they form something dangerous. A new baseline. And that's the first real trap. Because money doesn't disappear in big dramatic exits. It leaks through identity upgrades. At $50,000 net worth, you think in survival. At $200,000, you think in progress. At $500,000, you start thinking you figured it out. That's the exact point where behavior stops protecting you and starts expressing you. Dr. Sleen would call this the silent transition, where money stops being a problem you solve and becomes a personality you perform. You don't notice it at first. You just feel more stable. You stop checking your account as often. You start trusting your income. You assume momentum will carry you. But momentum is not wealth. Momentum is just motion without correction. And most people mistake it for safety. The first million is not built in one direction. It's built in two. Income grows, and discipline weakens at the same time. That's the contradiction nobody talks about. Because every level up introduces a new illusion. At $10,000, you think you understand money. At $100,000, you think you understand systems. At $500,000, you think you understand yourself. But at $1 million, you finally meet something else. Behavioral gravity. The force that pulls everything back toward your old identity. And it starts small. You justify expenses you used to question. You invest in things you don't fully understand because you're not a beginner anymore. You take slightly bigger risks because you survived smaller ones. And each decision feels consistent with success. But success has a blind spot. It stops questioning itself. There's a moment most people never recognize. You cross 7 figures, and your life doesn't simplify. It complicates. Because now, every decision carries invisible weight. Not just, can I afford this? But does this change who I am becoming? That question is where most people start losing money. Not in the market, not in business, in identity drift. You stop behaving like the person who built it and start behaving like the person who believes it's permanent. That shift is subtle, but it compounds faster than interest ever could. And then something even more dangerous happens. You get used to it. The number, the lifestyle, the margin for error. What used to feel like a breakthrough starts to feel normal. And normal is where decay begins. Because the moment something becomes normal, you stop protecting it with the same intensity. You stop double-checking decisions. You stop questioning assumptions. You stop noticing small inefficiencies. And wealth is extremely sensitive to small inefficiencies. At lower levels, mistakes are obvious. At higher levels, mistakes are quiet. They hide inside good enough decisions. You overpay slightly. You misallocate slightly. You delay action slightly. And none of it feels urgent. But urgency is what built the first million. And now, urgency is gone. This is the comfort trap. Not luxury, not spending. Comfort. You're no longer under pressure. And pressure was the thing forcing precision. Without pressure, precision becomes optional. And when precision becomes optional, drift becomes inevitable. Then there's another shift. You start valuing peace over progress. You avoid situations that feel chaotic. You step away from riskier opportunities. Not because they're bad, but because they're uncomfortable. And discomfort starts to feel unnecessary.
You've earned stability. But stability has a hidden cost. It slows adaptation. And money systems reward adaptation more than stability. So while you stabilize, someone else accelerates. Not smarter, not luckier, just more willing to stay uncomfortable longer. That's the gap. The gap doesn't open because you made a big mistake. It opens because you stopped making aggressive corrections. Then comes the quiet erosion of awareness. You stop tracking everything, not consciously, gradually. You check less, review less, audit less, because nothing feels broken. But systems don't break loudly at this level. They drift silently. And silent drift is the most expensive kind, because you don't react to it. You adjust to it. You normalize it. And by the time you notice, it's already part of your baseline. There's also something else people never talk about. At this level, your environment changes. The people around you think differently about money. They spend differently. They justify differently. And whether you realize it or not, you absorb that. Standards shift. Not upward in discipline, upward in tolerance. Tolerance for inefficiency. Tolerance for waste. Tolerance for, it's fine. And it's fine is one of the most expensive phrases in wealth, because nothing catastrophic is happening. Everything just becomes slightly less optimized. And slightly less optimized, compounded over years, is the difference between growing wealth and stagnant wealth. This is why most people don't lose their first million dramatically. They lose it structurally. Their system becomes weaker than their lifestyle. Their behavior becomes softer than their position. And their awareness becomes slower than their environment. And when those three things misalign, the outcome is predictable. Not immediate, but inevitable. Then, one day, something forces clarity. A bad year, a failed investment, a liquidity crunch. Something that exposes the system again. And for a moment, you see it clearly. The drift, the softness, the missed corrections. And you realize something uncomfortable. You didn't lose control suddenly. You gave it up gradually. That's when the real decision happens. Not when you make the first million. When you decide what kind of person you're going to be after it. Because after the first million, no external force is controlling your behavior anymore. No scarcity, no urgency, no pressure.
just choice. And most people are not as disciplined with choice as they were with necessity. So you sit there again. Different number now, same silence. And you understand something most people only learn too late. The first million was never a finish line. It was a filter. A separation point between two types of people. Those who adapt and those who relax. Because the truth is simple. Making money requires effort. Keeping money requires identity control. And growing money requires letting go of who you were when you made it. Most people can't do all three, so they cycle. Build, lose, rebuild, plateau, repeat. And someone, right now,
Someone is opening a banking app, seeing a number that feels like progress, thinking they finally made it, not realizing yet they've just entered the most fragile stage of the entire system. The balance looks stable, but the direction has already changed. And in this system, that's how it starts. Quietly. Every time.